Beginning of the chant. If you know the chant, chant along. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotir Gamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya Avir Avir Maeti Rudrayate Dakshinam Mukham Tenamam Pahi Nityam Tenamam Pahi Nityam. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from death to immortality. O Lord, shine through and through, and ever protect us with thy loving presence. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto all beings everywhere. Hello, Jayanti. Don, you can put it right here. Here. Right there, it's perfect. Just right there.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming today and finding your way around the rock and roll marathon that's going on today. So I probably have people coming in late because I'm sure roads are blocked. So it's a rock and roll because today we have a rock and roll Swami Atmajnanananda. I've seen pictures where he was a real hippie, all right? And he's here with us today from Washington, D.C. Just by show of hands, how many recognize Swami from seeing him previously? All right. Okay, about half the group. Okay. For those that don't know, Swami was in our Trabuco Monastery for many, many years. When did you actually, what year?
1981 to 97.
1981 to 1997. And he was a part of coming, he used to come here on a monthly basis. So he's well known by, we don't call them old timers, long timers. Okay? And he's a special person. His background is just, he's a scholar. He's a Sanskrit scholar. He's done research in Vaishnava traditions. He speaks fluent Bengali. He's lived in India for many years. And he's one of these swamis who, when he goes to India, he blends in perfectly in Indian culture. He eats with his hands, he nods his head like this. He's really, you'll see, when he's like an Indian. You won't know the difference there. And he's also a great carpenter. He has made the shrine in, if you go to part of the shrine in Kali Mandir, things in Trabuco, and Swami Vivekananda House. And if you go to DC, how many have gone to Washington, D.C. and seen the D.C. Center? One person, and Abai. All right. It's a beautiful center. It looks like it's a real temple with domes. And it has the only marble image of Sri Ramakrishna in the United States that I know of, at least. He's just remarkable. Wherever he goes, he seems to flower, he blossoms. And I think I told you guys last time, one of the things when I asked him what inspires him, he told me back in a Trabuco walk a long, long time ago, probably back in 96, 97, he told me that he's inspired by serving the devotees of God, serving the devotees of the divine. So if you go to DC, he'll make you feel very welcome. They have a guest house there. In fact, his guru, Swami Swahananji, I believe envisioned a place in DC where he wanted a Vedanta community to live near the center, a place where people can retire and then have the center as sort of like at the last stage of our life, feeling and being immersed in God consciousness. So there are people already colonizing around that center. So he's just a phenomenal Swami. He's wonderful. So today we're going to take advantage of his presence. He's going to give a lecture. The topic is going to be on weighing the bel fruit.
You
And-
just keep talking about me.
Oh,
I'm not used to this.
another thing about him is he is very humble. He's very, very humble. You don't need to, yeah, anyways, he's a very humble Swami. So I think you'll like his presence. He's a big Philadelphia fan. So if you're anti-Philadelphia, don't show your, he's into the Sixers and the football, so be pro-Philadelphia for today at least. All right, and with that, and so what we're going to take advantage, and we'll have lunch afterwards, and we're going to also, he's met a number of great inspiring souls, so we'll also hope to tap into that maybe after his talk. Swami Atmajnanananda. One more?
Well, Swami, thank you for that glowing introduction. Now you said a bar that I could never reach, so it's okay. And it's nice to see all of the people that I knew years ago, and to see how none of us have aged. Yeah, we all look the same. Yeah, so my topic is based on the analogy of the bel fruit, which Ramakrishna uses on various times in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. The talk is going to start out a little bit dry and philosophical, but I hope it'll sweeten up and soften up at the end, because the longer I'm in Vedanta, the less interested I am in philosophy, to be perfectly honest. Yeah, and I hope that'll be reflected a little bit here. But anyhow, does everyone know what the bel fruit is? Has any? Okay, yes. It's got a hard outer shell, and you have to kind of crack it, almost like a coconut, and it has a flesh inside, little fibery, and then inside of that it has seeds. You can almost think of a cantaloupe for this analogy. So you have to get rid of the outer rind. That's no good. You can't eat that, and you have to scoop out the seeds, and flesh is the essential part. So this is the way Sri Ramakrishna will use this analogy, that we want to get to the flesh of the fruit. But he adds, if we don't add the outer shell and the inner seed, we don't get the full weight of the bel fruit. Now, this analogy has been analyzed many, many times. And what's the real significance of it? Does it represent some deep philosophical position that Sri Ramakrishna holds? Is it contrary to Advaita Vedanta? How does it fit in? Now, all of these questions come up. So I want to delve a little bit into this analogy of the bel fruit and getting the full weight of the bel fruit. I have nice memories of the bel fruit, because this is what's used Shivaratri night, especially in other times, and they make a beautiful sherbet out of it. And while you're fasting, sometimes they break the fast with this, or some people will drink it throughout the night. And Sri Ramakrishna must have been very familiar with this, that they'll take the flesh and they'll smash it up and add a little sugar and water and everything and make a beautiful drink out of it. So many of the analogies that Sri Ramakrishna uses are based on very, very simple things. Peeling the onion, and all things that he was familiar with as a village boy. We have to remember that he was just a village boy who came to the big city and explained things in such a simple way that it's so much easier to understand than going through all the deep philosophy that we find. So we'll find different references to this analogy of the bel fruit. I'm going to read from the chapter, The Last Visit to Keshav. This is Keshav Chandra Sen, the founder of the Brahmo Samaj. This is November 28th, 1883. And just for context, Sri Ramakrishna is talking to one of the devotees there, and the devotee asks a question that why should we dismiss the world as Maya as some of the jnanis do? So that because the Brahmo Samaj, they were very much involved in the world. They did a lot of social service work. They were involved in free marriage of widows, marriageable age for girls, elimination of caste, so many things. And it was fashionable for the jnanis to say this world is Maya, that we shouldn't bother with it, that we have to go deep within and get the experience of the self, things like that. So it's a very good question. Why should we dismiss the world as Maya as some of the jnanis do? And here, Sri Ramakrishna will give this illustration, this analogy of the bel fruit, and he explains it in terms of two different categories that also become very, very important in his teachings. The category of the jnani and the category of the vijnani. If we want to put it in very simple terms, the jnani is the one following the path of knowledge, who may get to the roof and experience oneness, and the vijnani is the one who can come back down from the roof and see this world in a transformed kind of way. So he'll use it to explain that. So he says, as long as one has not realized God, one should reject the world. Now this is, reject the world doesn't mean to really reject the world. It means if we're trying to figure out what the real reality is, then we have to say that this world is impermanent, that it has to be something other than that. It doesn't mean that we don't care about the world. Anyhow, following the process of neti. So this is the typical practice of the along the path of Jnana Yoga, which Shankaracharya recommends. This neti has two different ways of being practiced. One, everything we see that's changing, everything we see that could be an object of our experience, cannot be Brahman. And anything that's a combination of elements, anything that belongs to this world of time, space, and causality, this can't be Brahman. And then when we look within, we make this distinction between the observer and everything that can be observed. So I'm not the body, even the mind can be observed, I'm not the mind. So this is that path of neti, until we isolate the ultimate reality, which we call Atman within or Brahman without. So as long as one has not realized God, one should reject the world, following the process of neti. But one who has attained God knows that it is God who has become all this. Then he sees that God, Maya, living beings, and the universe form one whole. God includes the universe and its living beings. Suppose you have separated the shell, flesh, and seeds of a bel fruit, and someone asked you the weight of the fruit. Will you leave aside the shell and the seeds and weigh only the flesh? Not at all. To know the real weight of the fruit, you must weigh the whole of it, the shell, the flesh, and the seeds. Only then can you tell its real weight. The shell, now he'll explain the analogy. The shell may be likened to the universe, so Jagat, this external universe, and the seeds to living beings, jivas. While one is engaged in discriminating, one says to oneself that the universe and the living beings are non-self and unsubstantial. At that time, one thinks of the flesh alone as the substance and the shell and seeds as unsubstantial. But after discrimination is over, one feels that all three parts of the fruit together form a unity. Then one further realizes that the stuff that has produced the flesh of the fruit has also produced the shell and the seeds. To know the real nature of the bel fruit, one must know all three. Okay, so very beautiful analogy, but it gives the impression that Sri Ramakrishna is accepting this idea that there are plurality of individual souls, like seeds. We can't reduce the seeds to one seed or reflection or anything. This is absolutely real. There are many jivas. Now, at the same time, he will talk about other doctrines that will give the opposite impression, that jiva is just a reflection. We'll get to these later. Now, what I want to do is show that Sri Ramakrishna is going to use this analogy in a different way also. So we're going to get these two bel fruit analogies. One is this Jnani and Vijnani, and the other will be the actual teachings of Ramanuja, this what's called Vishishta Dvaitavada, this qualified non-dualism. This comes from a conversation on March 11th, 1885, and it's a question that is asked by Sri Ramakrishna's beloved Narendranath, later Swami Vivekananda. And because they're talking about the different schools of Vedanta. Now, we know that Narendra was brilliant, that he had studied so much of philosophy, mostly Western philosophy, and he obviously wasn't very familiar with this qualified non-dualism. So he asked Ramakrishna, because Thakur was saying that he makes a tremendous statement here. Shankara's non-dualistic explanation of Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, is true. Also, so is the qualified non-dualistic interpretation of Ramanuja also true. Now, the philosophers will argue tooth and nail. They can't both be true. They're conflicting with each other. Either the individual self is real and there are many of them, or it's a reflection, there's only one Brahman. They can't both be true. But here he says both are true. Now, Narendra, so he says to him that, oh, I don't know anything about this Vishishta Dvaita Vedanta, this qualified non-dualism. Can you explain it to me? So Sri Ramakrishna says, it is the theory of Ramanuja. See, there were three great acharyas that we know. There were actually more, but the three schools of Vedanta are based on these three great acharyas, Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, and Madhvacharya. So we have the non-dualists, qualified non-dualists, and dualists, these three different schools. So Sri Ramakrishna says, it is the theory of Ramanuja. According to this theory, Brahman, or the absolute, is qualified by the universe and its living beings, Vishishta. Vishishta means there are visheshas, that there are attributes or qualities that can be attached to Brahman. That means Brahman is saguna, if we want to put it in philosophical terms. Shankaracharya will emphasize the nirguna aspect. Ramanuja emphasizes saguna aspect. So, qualified by the universe and its living beings. These three, Brahman, the world, and living beings, together constitute one. Then he gives the same illustration of the bel fruit. So, this illustration will show that we can have a conception of oneness that has internal difference. See, for the followers of Advaita Vedanta, Brahman is homogeneous. There can't be anything internally. They're considered non-dualist because they can say Brahman alone is real. Brahman alone exists, but Brahman has these different things attached to it. It has the living beings within, and it has the universe without. Then Sri Ramakrishna goes on, after giving the illustration of the bel fruit, he says the nitya and the lila are two aspects of one and the same reality. Now, Sri Ramakrishna used this terminology. Nitya means the eternal, but it also means the absolute. So that'll be this transcendent absolute reality of Brahman. And lila generally means the sport, play of God. But for him here, it means this relative universe. So Nitya and Leela are the two aspects of one and the same reality. Therefore, according to Ramanuja, Brahman is qualified by the universe and the living beings. This is the theory of qualified non-dualism. So, what is the real difference, main difference between these two schools, very important schools in India? In fact, far more people follow Ramanuja than Shankaracharya, and especially South India, very, very popular. Anyhow, main difference is that Shankaracharya gives emphasis to this nirguna aspect of Brahman, that Brahman is transcended beyond, nothing changing, nothing, only absolute reality. And Ramanuja gives more emphasis to the saguna aspect, that Brahman is the power of creation and that everything exists within it, something like that. And we'll find that both traditions, and really when we get to Ramanuja, now we have the basis for the real devotional traditions. Yeah. So we'll find that this is the main distinction between the Jnanis and the Bhaktas also. We have a couple of nice examples that show the exact opposite points of view that they both have. Yeah. One, and we know that Sri Ramakrishna had a very strong devotional element to him. He used to say very often that devotion is the one essential thing. But he was a jnani also. There's no question about that. So he gives this one illustration that he asked, why do we see the sky as blue? And he says, because we're looking at it from a distance. If we go close, then we see it has no color at all. Or he says the water. The water will look like blue or green or something. We go close, we put it in our hands, we see it has no color at all. So because we see it from a distance, that it appears to have attributes and qualities. So that means that when the closer we get to Brahman, we see the real nature of it beyond everything, that nirguna aspect. Now, the devotee has a very interesting way. We find this in the Vaishnava tradition of explaining from the opposite point of view. So they say that Krishna, he sees a person walking from a great distance, and he doesn't recognize the person. He can't see any of the really facial features of anything because the person is too far away. But the closer the person walks to him, that he can recognize, oh, it's my friend Narada. So the same thing, but seeing it from a distance for the devotee means we'll see Brahman. When we talk about Brahman without attributes, it's because we haven't come close enough. When we get close, we can see all the features and the attributes. So exactly the opposite type of explanation. There's a very nice line in their scriptures. It says, Yad Advaitam Brahma Upanishadi Tadapi Asya Tanubha. The non-dual Brahman of the Upanishads is also nothing but the glow of light emanating from the body of Krishna. Yeah. So how they have these different points of view, and both are equally beautiful. Yeah. See, Sri Ramakrishna, he loved everything. That was the wonderful thing about him. He was not a philosopher like the acharyas were philosophers. This is really the main point that I want to make, that they like to butt heads. This is how they establish their position, by arguing against the others and showing flaws in everything, so they could establish their own position. Sri Ramakrishna was not like that. He was all-inclusive. He accepted all of these different points of view. So how do we understand this? This is the main question. Do we simply gloss over the differences between Shankara and Ramanuja, saying they're not very important? Do we take this frequent use of the bel fruit analogy to try to show somehow that Sri Ramakrishna was a follower of Ramanuja? Now, it sounds silly to me, but there are people who do that. And M, the recorder of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, seems to give a hint that this is what he feels that this is Sri Ramakrishna's real teaching. Now, is it because of this Ramanuja thing or because of this Vijnana idea? Yeah. But if we look at this from a little deeper point of view, I think that we can see that Sri Ramakrishna could reconcile these from a philosophical point of view, and also understood that people can utilize these. These are different spiritual paths that we can follow. And also, Sri Ramakrishna, because he loved this path of devotion, there has to be some way to establish a relationship. There's no devotional attitude that doesn't involve some type of relationship between ourselves and God. We may feel that there's ultimately some type of oneness, but Sri Ramakrishna gives all of these illustrations, like the stick on the water, that the stick of the water is the ego is like a stick, separating one side from the other, and giving us the feeling that we're separate from God, and we can establish a relationship with God, at the same time knowing that the stick can't really separate one side from the other side. So he'll use these different types of analogies. But the real sticking point and the real argument between these schools is, what about at the time of liberation? So for the Advaitin, we merge into Brahman. For these devotional schools, the jiva remains a separate individual jiva, even in the state of liberation, and can experience some presence of God in a state like that. So they quarrel about all of these things. Now, for the Advaitin, the nature of the jiva is not absolute. We all feel that we're separate people. I don't feel like I'm you, and you don't feel like you're me. So Advaita Vedanta has beautiful ways of explaining this. And Sri Ramakrishna, again, he uses that analogy of the sun reflected in containers of water. So each reflected sun is like a jiva, but there's no absolute reality to it. It's just the reflection. There's only one sun. So he used this analogy very often. Side by side with the bel fruit is the onion. He uses the onion analogy, that if we want to find the real nature of the individual, we peel off all the layers of the onion. That means the body, the mind, the senses, and everything. And when we get to peel off everything there's only empty space, which is one with infinite space, which is one with everyone. So there's no ultimate reality to the jiva, the individual soul, in the Advaita Vedanta. It's all based on false identification with these body, mind, senses, everything like that. So this is that kind of ultimate truth, and Sri Ramakrishna accepted it because he's giving this example. He's giving the onion example. He's giving the example of the stick on water. That once this ego dissolves, then there's only that ocean of consciousness. But he accepts the other one also. Now, how does he do it? This is the question. That is he inconsistent? Does he just have different moods? So these are the issues. Do we need to reconcile these things somehow? We have a very beautiful Vedic verses, Om Purnamada Purnamida, that talks about this Brahman is an infinite absolute reality, and this universe is also somehow full and complete and infinite and perfect. We remove it from the reality of the Brahman, and which is infinite, it remains infinite. So that means that if we remove the outer shell of the bel fruit and remove the seeds, the weight will be the same, according to Advaita Vedanta. There's another way of saying, if we have waves in the ocean, we get rid of the waves, it's still the same amount of water. There's nothing added to it. We have the example, which is very commonly used in the Upanishads, of gold, ornaments that are made of gold. Now, the value of a golden ornament is the gold. And in India, traditionally, ancient India, today to a certain extent, a person measured the wealth that he had in terms of the amount of gold jewelry he bought for his wife. And at any time, they can melt it down and create something else. Then the name and the form that it takes were completely irrelevant to that whole thing. They would just weigh it. That was the weight of it. So whatever form it takes, whatever name we give it, was completely secondary to it. So this is what we find in from the Advaitic point of view. that we're not adding anything or subtracting anything when we talk about this external universe and the individual souls. So you can see this real difference between these two schools of thought. So it's nama-rupa. Name and form is the only thing that causes this type of separation. Or if we think of the snake and the rope, this is a common example in Advaita Vedanta. We see a rope and we think it's a snake. And once we realize that it's a rope, if we want to think, how much did it weigh when we thought it was a snake, and how much does it weigh when we know it's a rope? Huh? It'll be the same. We're not adding anything. So how do we say we're not getting the full weight of it if we only know it as a rope, or if we think that it's a snake? So we're going to have to come up with a different way of understanding this. Now, this is really the point that I want to make, is that I don't want to take this too literally with regard to weighing things and with regard to weight and adding and subtracting and everything. We know that Sri Krishna could barely add when he was a boy, that he couldn't subtract, and multiplication was out of the question. So we can't blame it on that, but at any rate, we'll see that at least my understanding is that he's talking about something a little bit different when he says we're not getting the full weight. That there's a very nice way to understand this in terms of how we live in the world, how we experience the world, even how we have some type of devotional attitude in the world. So I want to start with one very basic fact, to me, the basic fact, that for Sri Ramakrishna, philosophy was not, truth is not found in philosophy. That truth is found in experience. And there's a phrase that he used over and over again that became a kind of a watchword for Vedanta according to Sri Ramakrishna, Joto ma toto pot. Now, this traditionally has been meant to refer to the different religious practices that Sri Ramakrishna had, that each different faith is a path to God. Now, this term, mata in Sanskrit, also can refer to all these different philosophical schools. So that means that if one follows this highly dualistic type of path, God and beings are eternally separate. God created us. And like in the Upanishads, the sparks come out of the fire and have their own separate, independent existence. Yeah. So this is a path that one can follow, a spiritual attitude that one can have that will help one climb to the roof and realize God. So for Sri Ramakrishna, each of these different spiritual and philosophical schools represented a different path that was suited to a different type of person. So this Jotamo Totopad, it doesn't just mean all religions are leading us to the same truth, that all of these different philosophical positions also can work for each and every one of us, depending upon our nature, depending upon what appeals to us, depending upon what's good and helpful for us. Sri Ramakrishna had a formula. He used two terms, ruchi bhed. We all have a different taste. Some we like how things taste, some things we appeal to us, some things we don't like. And hajam shakti, we all have a different power of digestion. So he would give the example of the mother who cooks fish for the children. And she says that some of them, she knows they like a certain preparation. They like fish stew, or they like fried fish or fish sticks, whatever it is. They like a certain type of thing. But she also knows some of them can't digest it. They have a weak stomach. That for them, she has to make a separate type of preparation. So for Sri Ramakrishna, everything boiled down to this. What spiritual path, what attitude. See, instead of saying that one is right or one is wrong, or this is a proper philosophical position, what spiritual attitude appeals to us and what is good for us, what works for us. Nowadays, it's very kind of a fad. Everybody wants to be a non-dualist. If you say something is dualistic, becomes a dirty word. Yeah, no, I hear this all the time. You say something, you say, yeah, but that's a dualistic. Yeah. We live in a world of dualism. Yeah, yeah. Why not make use of it? But yeah. Yeah. But for Sri Ramakrishna, these were attitudes, spiritual attitudes. In fact, his preference was this dualistic attitude where we can even assume a false personality for ourselves. Assume a false personality for ourselves in order to break this identification with our present personality. Yeah, yeah. He uses this term arop kora. Arop kora. We assume something as if we do some role playing. He used to do that. Sri Ramakrishna used to do that. That he would dress up like the people that he was, if he was following the Vaishnava path, he dressed like the Vaishnavas. If he was following Islamic path, he'll dress like them. He'll eat their food. He'll take that. If we're worshiping God as mother, then he'll look upon himself as a child. When he wanted to worship God as Rama, he had to become Hanuman. He became Hanuman. The whole, and is this of any ultimate final truth? No, of course not, because he could equally think of himself as a handmaid of God. But these are all meant to be aids in spiritual life and help us in our spiritual journey. So Sri Ramakrishna, he used to say, I like all preparations of fish. So that means he practiced all of them and he realized God through all of them. Yeah. So he didn't make any of these types of distinction. This is why I think it's very foolish to try to pigeonhole Sri Ramakrishna or any of the Swamis of our order into any one position. Some may prefer, yeah, it may appeal. This non-dualistic Vedanta is very appealing on many levels. But the devotional path is equally appealing. It's not a question of right or wrong. So Sri Ramakrishna was to add, Jotomo Totopot, he would say, Tobepot Ishonoi, but the path is not God. Don't confuse them. The path is not God. This is just a means to get to the roof, to have that ultimate experience. One of the great Swamis of our order was Swami Bhuteshanandaji. Swami wanted me to give some reminiscences a little bit. He was so loving and sweet-natured that if anybody ever got a scolding from anybody, then the Swamis would come and say, go talk to Swami Bhuteshanandaji. He'll soften, he'll smooth everything out. Yeah, very wonderful Swami, but a brilliant scholar also, a very rare combination of somebody so sweet and loving and humble and simple, and yet brilliant scholar, especially both two things, Upanishads and the devotional literature of Bhagavata. Anyhow, he gave a lot of, a long series of lectures on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, which was published, I think it's in English now also, originally in Bengali. And he makes a great statement. He said that Sri Ramakrishna was equally three. That means equally an Advaitin, equally Vishishta Advaitin, and equally Advaitin. Equally a non-dualist, qualified non-dualist, and a dualist. Not at the same time, not combining them, not compromising on any of them, but different moods at different times, different spiritual attitudes that he had. Of course, he would say everything ends in oneness. So that was the one kind of common feature for that. There's another reference that we have in the Gospel that Sri Ramakrishna makes many times. This is reference to Hanuman and Rama. That Hanuman, after he came back from the exile, and he was given a big position, and there was a big assembly, and Hanuman came. In this whole big assembly, that Sri Rama says to Hanuman, how do you look upon me? It's come up many times in the Gospel. And he quotes this verse of Hanuman. He doesn't give the Sanskrit verse, but a very nice verse. He says, Deha buddhya, when I think of myself as the body, to dasoham, then I'm your servant. So this is Hanuman, a very brilliant monkey. And then he says, jiva buddhya, twadang shakaha, when I think of myself as an individual soul, jiva, then you're the whole and I'm a part of you. And then he says, atma buddhya, when I think of myself as the atman, tvam eva aham, tvam eva aham, you and I are one and the same. Then he says, iti nishtita me matihi, this is my final conviction. This is my final conviction. And the final conviction, it's not just the final verse, it's all three of them. That it's a question of how he thinks of himself at that time. If he has the body consciousness, then he looks upon Rama as the master, and his only goal in life is to serve him. That was his main attitude. But sometimes a little bit deeper, he would feel that they belong to each other. That is a part of him. And when that mind goes a little bit higher, then how to make a distinction that he feels that they're one and the same. So this is a verse that Sri Krishna refers to. He doesn't quote it exactly, but many times in the Gospel of Sri Krishna. So that means that he accepts all three of these schools of Vedanta as valid, not a question of true. Every school has its relative value. There are flaws in all of them. And Sri Krishna even says that. Every religion has its little errors in it or flaws in it. That God alone is the ultimate reality. Everything else is man-made. It's really, this philosophy is just our way of trying to understand something that has to be experienced. And yet we fight over it. So, anyhow, so this is one way of understanding how Sri Krishna could accept these things. But I want to just suggest one other thing, that we can expand this idea of not getting the full weight to mean we don't get the full experience of life if we restrict ourselves to any one thing. So if we look at this example of gold, now for the Advaitin, the value of gold is the gold, is the weight of the gold, how much we have. And yet, what about the artistry of the craftsman? What about the beautiful design work and everything? If we don't appreciate that, we're not getting the full weight. So it just a slightly different way of trying to understand this. This is what Swami Krishna means when he says that we have to look at this universe as he uses this term Aishwarya, as this lordly manifestation, the glory of God. Now, if we say that it's simply Maya, then we're missing out. If we dismiss it, if we say that this will only bring some attachment, it'll only bring ignorance, that it'll keep us bound to the world, then we won't be able to enjoy the world. Sri Krishna enjoyed the world. He enjoyed everything. He could go to the circus, he could go to the theater, have a nice meal, enjoy food and everything, because he saw everything as divine. And he saw everything as the manifestation of the divine. Either he would say, I see God dwelling within all beings, or I see everything as a manifestation of consciousness, Chinmaya, everything a manifestation of Brahman. Or I see everything as a manifestation of the Divine Mother, even personalizing it even more. So we can look at this as not really a battle between Shankaracharya and Ramanujacharya, but as Ramakrishna's way of saying that we shouldn't restrict ourselves to any one particular position, to understand that this neti, kind of denying the reality of the world, is a way just to get to the roof. And that the higher reality is then we see that everything is divine. So we have this very all-inclusive way of understanding these things. And so for Sri Ramakrishna, he gave equal value. This is the distinction, if we want to make a distinction. Equal value to the transcendent aspect and the immanent aspect. To God with form and to God beyond everything. So the Nirguna Brahman and Saguna Brahman, and he felt if we accept one and not the other, we're not getting the full weight. So this will extend itself in many different ways. Yeah, let me go back to this other example. One other way of trying to understand this idea of Brahman being both Nirguna and Saguna. This is really one of the great teachings of Swami Krishna, that both are equally important. If we use the illustration of the sun, now the sun is pure light. It has no color. Does everyone agree? There's no color to light. Light is colorless. If there's any color to it, then we won't see things that their actual color. If we put a filter in front of it, it's red, everything will look red. That otherwise, light has no color. Yeah. But if it passes through a prism, it turns into all the colors of the rainbow on the other side. Yeah. So if we say that light is colorless, we're not getting the full weight. We're not seeing that Shakti aspect, that it has the possibility of becoming all of the colors of the universe without changing. So both are true. Both are true at the same time. And the same sun is a source of warmth. It's a source of life, that plants can convert it into food, and it can be converted into energy. There are so many other things that if we simply restrict it to this nirguna aspect, just illumination, just light, we won't get the full weight. So, for Swami Krishna, the withdrawing from things, and he used to point to the ancient rishis, this is also a way of denying ourselves a full experience. He used to, I won't say criticize, but he would point to them as being a little timid. These ancient rishis, he would say that they would leave their ashram early morning and go into the forest and spend all day meditating. They wouldn't look up or down, didn't want to see anything. They were afraid that they'll get attached to this and that. And they would simply go back. And he said, no, we should be like the expert dice players. We can live in the world, we can throw whatever number we want, and be able to enjoy things like that. So he used to pray. He used to pray to the Divine Mother, don't make me a dry sadhu. Yeah. There was an instance where one of the devotees, Hari, who later became Swami Turiyananda, the great direct disciples, that Swami Krishna asked him, who do you love? And he said, I don't love anyone. He was full of the fire of renunciation at that time. So he said, I don't love anyone. So Swami Krishna said, such a dry fellow. Yeah. So this is another way. Of course, at a certain period of our life, we have to withdraw. This is that neti and everything. But we're denying ourselves. See, we have to be able to see the divine both within and without, and see that manifestation everywhere. So if we understand that the divine presence within us is the real self, and we want to just go deeper and deeper, we're missing the beauty of seeing that divine self in everyone else, and serving them as God. This was, of course, a great emphasis of Swami Vivekananda, the worship of the living God. So if we don't do that, we're also not getting the full weight. We have to see that divine presence everywhere. And if we see God dwelling in other beings, what is the connecting factor? How do we really understand this? See, we have different ways of understanding. One, same self within me is the self within you. Very difficult. I don't know how anybody can do that until they're actually fully God-realized souls. I can see the same divine presence in others. I know that I have that consciousness within me, that consciousness is within you, that Atman dwells within you, that light of consciousness is there. Is that enough? I don't think so. See, Swami Vivekananda, he said at one time that he'd fall in love with mankind, with people. And he had a special love for the poor for the uneducated, for the exploited. That has nothing to do with the self. It's the divine presence shining within the personality. And this is also, if we don't see that, because each individual also has those three aspects. We're one with the Brahman. We're also an individual soul with all of these coverings, and we're also human beings. If we don't accept all three, we're not getting the full weight. So there's another way of trying to understand this. Now, when we get to the worship of the avatar, if we look upon Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, as Brahman itself, Brahman embodied in the human form, and don't value and appreciate the personality of them. This is, to me, this is the beauty. So we can add Swami Vivekananda and the other direct disciples, but how that divine presence shone through this such a beautiful personality that they had. We have a very wonderful hymn. This is called the Dhyana Mantra that we recite for Sri Ramakrishna. It was written by Swami Atmajnanananda, and it starts out with all the descriptions of infinite absolute Brahman. So when we're thinking of Sri Ramakrishna, it starts that Purade Kamaramadhye Rajitam Nirvikalpam. We picture Sri Ramakrishna dwelling within the heart as that pure, infinite, absolute consciousness. Then it comes down a little bit more that we picture Sri Ramakrishna as taking human form and coming to give knowledge and devotion and love and everything. And then we get to Sri Ramakrishna, whose heart is melting, seeing the suffering of human beings. So if we don't accept all of these, say in our meditation, if it's only this Sri Ramakrishna who is that light of consciousness or something, or it's the only Sri Ramakrishna who lived as a human being for 50 years, we have to take the full package, all of it. Otherwise, we don't get the full weight of the bel fruit. So this is just my own kind of way of understanding what's really meant by this analogy. When he says you don't get the full weight, that we have to experience everything. If we can tie everything in, the relative and the absolute, all as divine. Now, one final point before we stop. I'm going to borrow another analogy that Sri Ramakrishna uses about the mango grove, and that is with the bel fruit. If we only analyze it, if we only crack it open, if we only separate the seeds and everything, and we don't make the sherbet out of it, and we don't drink it, then we're missing the whole point of it. So Sri Ramakrishna says, when you go to the mango grove, eat the mangoes. Don't worry about how many there are or how many branches and twigs and everything. You've come to eat them. We've come to drink this beautiful bel fruit drink. So this is the main thing, that we have to have this direct experience. We have to go beyond all of these philosophical meanderings and reach that point where we understand that any one of these positions can take us to that highest goal if we're sincere, if we put in the work, if we have great devotion and love for the ideal, and have that faith and devotion, that we can have that experience. And this is the ultimate goal of life, to eat the mangoes, to drink the bel fruit juice. So I'll stop here. Yeah.
So this point, we can open, just have maybe a couple questions, and then we can go in the backyard and explore deeper into the insights Swami just presented us. If you have a question, just raise your hand. Nobody has a question? Okay, Shanti has a question here.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
If a person who suffers a lot in the world, and at the end of it, they still feel, well, this is what God has given me, and you accept it, will you therefore attain liberation in this body itself?
that we can't say, but we know that they'll attain a state of contentment. See, this is the other thing about a spiritual attitude, that there are two benefits. One, spiritually, will we grow spiritually? Will we have some ultimate experience, some liberation? And the other thing is, will it allow us to get through this lifetime, which is full of so many challenges and so much misery and everything? We have some verses from the Gita, which I especially like, that talk about, say, a spiritual attitude. And it'll say, one verse especially I like, that we have to learn how to withstand the force of all of the passions and everything. That so we're not in the grip of anger and greed and hatred and lust, all of these different things. That person is considered to be a yogi. But then it said that person is a happy person. Yeah. So some of these things, if we have a particular spiritual attitude, I like, this is really something that appeals to me very much. Not a philosophical position, an attitude. Sometimes our spiritual attitude is something that we may not absolutely believe in. We may not absolutely believe in, but we adopt that attitude and it is extremely helpful. I'll give a couple of examples. One, if we believe that everything that happens is the will of the Divine Mother, and we adopt the attitude of the kitten. Wherever the mother cat puts the kitten is happy, whether it's in the ashes in the fireplace or on the pillow on the master's bed, because the kitten thinks, my mother put me here, therefore it must be the best thing for me. Now, if we take that attitude, we'll be content in life. Now, I try to do it. Now, if somebody asks me, do you literally think that there's some divine mother somewhere who's looking at everything and say, oh, now I'll make him do this, now I'll make this happy? I said, well, no, probably not. But that's beside the point. If I adopt that attitude, then I have a certain level of surrender and contentment, and I don't bother about things so much. Now, will it mean that I'll attain liberation? I don't think that's, it can help, of course, but it's not assured. There's no way that we can be assured. That's also a question of faith. Now, the two other things about liberation. One is, will it give me some enlightenment now? Probably not. But at the moment of death, if that moment of death, I feel, yes, Mother, take me, whole life I've relied on you. And yeah, of course, it should at that moment. Yeah. So the spiritual attitude. Oh, the other example is karma. That, Abhay was asking me about a Swami Atmajnanananda story. I'll tell this one story, yeah. We were walking one day in the hills, Hollywood Hills. This was towards the end of his life, and his health wasn't very good. And for some reason, he had no attendant at that time. Maybe Deepak had gone to India, or who else. There was no one there to really help him. So I said to him that it's such a shame that at this stage of your life, you really don't have anybody to really look after you and everything. So he looked at me and he said, what can I do? It's my karma. Yeah. But with just perfect contentment and peace, that not the slightest idea of, yeah, it's too bad, and this person, and why didn't this person do that? Yeah, it's my karma. Now, did he actually believe that he did anything bad in this lifetime or any other lifetime that he should suffer at the end? I don't think so. I certainly didn't. Or did he feel that this was meant to break any last attachment he might have? Who knows? But the point is that taking that attitude brought absolute surrender and peace and calmness to him. He said it so simply and with such conviction and with no doubt whatsoever. It's my karma working, not making a show of anything. Yeah, it was really a wonderful thing for me to experience that. So, yeah, I like to think in terms of spiritual attitudes and which ones are helpful for us and how we can benefit from them, rather than all these philosophies. Who knows what's real and what's true and what's not true? Yeah, and Now, this is a point. I don't know how many people will agree with me or not, but who cares if there's really one jiva or many jivas? We all have to live in this world. Yeah, I mean, it's such an abstract thing that people will fight over these things. Such an abstract thing. Yeah, that state of liberation. But what if all of us are in that state of liberation? Everyone is in their own separate phone booth and one with God. Or everyone is different drops of water. They've merged in the ocean. They've all become the ocean. Are they separate drops? Are they no longer separate drops? Who cares? I mean, really. And yet we fight over these things in Vedanta. Yeah. This is my attitude. So I'm really an anti-philosopher with a lot of philosopher baggage in my head. Yeah.
Okay,
Yes. Yeah. Uli. Oh, there's one in the back first. Sorry, yeah.
I wanted to, just about every religion, I think, preaches like non-violence and tolerating more and more physical abuse,
Mm-hmm.
But, and basically, they say it'll make you stronger mentally, but actually, tolerating verbal abuse can cause a lot of mental and emotional damage. And, but they say it'll make you spiritually stronger. So what benefit does it really do to you if you're doing something, if you're doing non-violence and letting people walk all over you and causing all sorts of emotional or mental damage to you,
Mm-hmm.
just at the cost of becoming spiritually stronger?
Yeah, we have to protect ourselves. We can't just let people do whatever they want. Sri Ramakrishna, he takes an in-between position. Don't.
Yeah, he basically tells you to be, I think, to be assertive and not let.
He says hiss at them but don't bite them. He gives the example of the snake. We have to protect ourselves. We have to. Yeah, there may be times when we have to fight people even. This is the whole. Say Swami Vivekananda. He says this idea of non-resistance is only for the sannyasin, for the householder who has to fight and stand up for the rights of society and himself. Not to be violent, of course, overly, but yeah, we shouldn't let people walk all over us and just say, well, it's going to make me stronger. It may not. It may make us bitter and frustrated and everything.
It may cause a breakdown.
Yeah, of course.
Breakdowns.
Yeah. So no, we shouldn't become a punching bag for people. Yeah, we have to protect ourselves that way. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Uli? Yeah.
When we were asked if we have any questions, my reaction was, you've given us so many answers to questions we've already had, and this has been wonderful, the clarification about these different paths, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just one maybe final question. What do you think, the question I actually had was regarding Swami Shwanaji Maharaj.
Mm-hmm.
You just made it sort of like he had an attitude. My question was, what do you think his spiritual attitude was? What was his sort of attitude? Like, we talk about sometimes Sri Ramakrishna was a bhakta on the outside, a Gyani on the inside, Swamiji being different. The way you just explained the talk is that we should have multiple attitudes. We should be sort of in the moment and be receptive to what sounds like what would be most helpful in the situation from a pragmatic sense.
I can't say with certainty about himself, but I know with regard to other people, he was always he wasn't an either or, he was an and. I should have put it away. He was an either. He said, yeah, you can do this or you can do that. He never pushed any one thing. It was always, yeah, try it. It was, he was really for personal freedom with that. And I think he was free from attitudes to a large degree. He was the funniest, strangest combination of the most active, restless mind when it came to the work of Vedanta and trying to spread the work and all of that. And at the same time, the most quiet mind that I'd ever seen. that somehow he had a level of mind that just was always quiet and peaceful. We had a great Swami of our order that we know as Gopesh Maharaj. He was a disciple of Holy Mother. And I really feel that, and Swami Swanji used to say this, he didn't say it so outright, but I really feel that his spiritual attitude towards things was so much influenced by Gopesh Maharaj. And Gopesh Maharaj was just a wonderful combination of brilliant mind, Jnana Yoga, and a devotional attitude. And I don't find any angularities in Swami Swananji. I think it was very much like this, that they equally like this Jnana Yoga and path of devotion, and just he had a majesty to him. Yeah, he had sometimes at least I would feel, just sit in his presence and the mind would get quiet. Yeah. And just on some level that he was untouched by anything. I can tell one more story. Sure. Should I tell? Since I'm at it now. Sure. There's a little personal story. I won't tell any names or anything, but I came for a visit to Tribuka one time, and one of our very senior swamis that had been there but had moved away, who I loved very much. We were very, very close. He was going to drive down, he was in Santa Barbara, drive all the way down to see me. And I was very touched by that. And that night we were invited to a devotee's house for dinner. So assuming he'll come with us. Well, the monks are going, that he'll come with us. And so I told the devotee, and then the devotee called back and said, I hate to say this, but it's a very special day for me. It was her 50th birthday or something. And I have it all figured out who's going to sit where, and I want it to be just the people that I really know. And I don't know how to say it, but better if he doesn't come. Yeah. So I went to Swami Swananji and I said, I'm stuck. I am in a fix. How can I leave him, the Swami who's coming to see me? Can I tell her that no, I'm not going to go? Make a big issue. What do I do? And how do I tell him that he can't come with us? And so he thought for a second, he looked at me and he said, blame me. Yeah, I was shocked, absolutely shocked. He said, blame me. So I said, how can I do that? I can't do that. But the point was that he didn't care about public opinion. People he respected, of course, he was happy if they respected him. But otherwise, he was perfectly willing to have the Swami or the devotee, whoever, think he's the bad guy, so that they wouldn't blame me for that. So it was partly just the way he was, and partly I felt how much he loved me, that he didn't want me to be in trouble or anything, to get me out of the fix that I was in. And things worked out that night, but I always remember that. Believe me, yeah, I don't mind.
What ended up happening?
We explained to him the situation, and he didn't come with us, and we came back, and we had the next day together and everything. And he was good about it. Yeah. So anyhow, he had such a love of spreading Vedanta, and spreading the message to as many people as possible, and giving people scope. Yeah, how he gave all of us scope to, before his time. It was only India, Swamis who came from India who could be heads of center and speak and everything. And he just wanted everybody to be able to actualize their potential, and to give everybody freedom to grow and everything. And didn't care what people thought about him. That was he was above everything. Just kind of, really wonderful. But I don't think he had anything that if you asked him, I like this, I like that also. I don't think any one particular spiritual attitude or anything. He appreciated everything.